We'll call the
Okay, so down
Infrastructure
here.
Property Committee meeting to order. Roll call, Paul Bissonnette.
Here.
Paul Gottlieb.
Here.
And Rob Carmichael, Chair, here. First item on the agenda is the Solar Committee discussion.
I had included in your packet letters from two people who had indicated interest in serving on a solar committee to look at the use of the former landfill for that purpose. And we also had John Paul Lalonde and Nancy Minot who sent emails expressing interest in that committee as well. So we had Don White and John Egrecht. I think that's how you pronounce. I don't know if you I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. If I am, I apologize. And Nancy Minot and John Paul Lalonde, who contacted us after we advertised for members.
I like that. He sent a resume. Let's hire him.
And I assume that they'll work with the whatever the new infrastructure committee is. So in terms of reporting to the council, just update. We have a number of volunteers at this point. We have
And there was a discussion of having two counselors and then interested community members.
Well, it sounds as four interested community members, and
Yeah.
we just need two council.
Right.
Oh.
All right, anything else on the solar committee discussion?
That's a great idea.
Next one is waterfront trailer bids. And I understand we had 3 bids and recommending the $7,000 one, I think it was
Scott.
covered wagons.
Yep.
So you want just a little bit of background?
Yes. For several years, well, actually, I'm in my 5th year, and the discussion was being had back then that there was not sufficient storage room for the machinery and equipment that's used to maintain the waterfront. And at the time I came here, there had been a proposal to perhaps enlarge the storage shed that's behind Main Street here, that's already taking up some parking space, but to make that bigger. And there was a $50,000 price tag associated with that proposal. And so staff has discussed since that time what might be a better alternative, which is that machinery and equipment needs to be used in the summer and could be kept in a storage trailer and then moved off site to the Public Works garage in the winter, which would leave more parking year-round and allow for more mobility, but also with a $8,000 price tag instead of a $50,000 price tag in another building was seen to be a better and more cost-effective alternative to building on another building. So that's the background on where this came from, but we're at the point where that structure there is in really poor shape and not terribly functional.
Question?
Where are we going to put this in the summer? Where's this going to be parked?
Either here or on the other end of
Like
the...
in this parking lot?
Well,
or can it be, I guess my question is there a place they can park it? I mean, this is movable. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think that's large to park out back here, because it would take up parking spots, I think, if not in use. Is there a possibility of moving it? You know, if all right, today they're doing the grounds or whatever, it's brought down, and when it's not being used, it goes back, maybe?
Yeah,
It's just a thought.
We talked about
beside the museum in between there and the bank,
Oh,
where
okay.
hardly anybody parks.
Sure.
And that would be less impact on this area here.
Right, perfect.
And this building would come down.
Oh, okay, so there would be some room out there, I guess, for you.
Yeah,
Let it up.
As I said, it's in poor condition. It's not.
Yeah, we would have it.
Let it purple and gold or something.
Or something.
Go Bucks. Motion to approve.
Any other questions? Any other, this would come from reserve funds or?
Yes.
All right, any questions from the public?
It really is.
All right, I have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? It's a vote. Okay, next item on the agenda is the wastewater alarm system.
The Safety Committee, as part of its discussion, I don't know if Jamie's here yet, from the wastewater department, has reviewed all of our town buildings, and the sewer treatment facility, the new one, doesn't have an alarm system that notifies of gas issues. And if any of you have been to the Headworks building, it's 3 or 4 stories down. And the concern is that if there was gas present, by the time somebody realized it, it could be a problem if there's no alarm system that does notification out of that. And the proposal that our sort of treatment folks put together for that is to install this alarm system so that it's not just you'll get an email sometime when an occurrence has happened, as opposed to alarm that's a more instant notification.
Who does that, is this manned at night?
The-
facility staff?
no.
Who would it go to at night?
It would go to, well, it would go to all of the,
Linked into the fire department somehow?
it would, the notifications would go by text or by phone to whoever's on duty. The problem is when something happens right now, one person responds to the site, and there are alarms for certain other things at the site, but not for the presence of gas in that Headworks building primarily, in a way that allows them to not be looking for an email at some point. So that is the request, and the recommendation from the Safety Committee is to have the town purchase the alarm system for use at the sewer treatment facility that would be less reactive and more proactive in terms of notification if there's a problem. Jamie Bowden was going to be here this evening, and maybe, I think perhaps he's going to be here at the council meeting, because it is on the agenda for approval as a resolve, anticipating that for a safety-related item we may want to move forward with that. But it is that's the rationale for why it is and what it is. But it is an item that was not included in the design of the facility.
Question?
Only one quote? Or is that
This
the
is
only company?
Train. This is
That's who does it.
that's who does it.
Period.
There's not.
I'm good with
Well, no, there's not
explanation
an.
works for me.
That's who has done all of the electronics work at that facility.
Where's the money come from?
Hmm?
Does that come from reserves? Or,
That comes from sewer reserves. That does not come from general fund.
doesn't, okay. Motion,
Any,
needs to be done.
Any questions, comments?
Why was this not in the original design on this plan?
I don't know the answer to that, Jim.
Well-
It was not, there is, let me back up. There are alarm systems built in. There's not an alarm system that does a notification that, for the presence of gas in the Headworks building. There are other alarms that go off at that facility that they get notifications on their phone and they go. But for the Headworks facility and the presence of gas, that isn't, that one wasn't.
What exactly type of gas is this that we're talking about?
Sewer-related methane, the byproduct
Okay,
of,
so it's gas that's generated by the process that's going on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't thought of that this should be taken care of, because like you said, this is 3 stories down. Any safeguards should have been in the plan of this thing.
I don't disagree with you at all. I know that the system that is currently set up in that building for alarm notifications isn't for the presence of gas, and that's what was raised with the safety committee when they did their recent evaluation of the thing. We've not been, when we had our OSHA inspection and all that, there was no identification that the facility lacked anything in terms of safety. This discussion relates to the fact that number one, only one person responds at a time. You're 3 stories down, and you can't text your way out or call for help if it's been a gas kind of event. As I said, Jamie Bowden, who was there and is the one who presented to the safety committee as well, discussed why the current, an email will go out if something happens, isn't appropriate if you're responding alone to something that's 3 stories down.
Okay, now, if this alarm goes off, is there a ventilation system that can automatically clean that out, or is it just, does it dissipate on its own? What happens?
Depending on what the nature of the alarm was, they would have to take steps to clear it of gas. What it would do is notify employees not to just go in and start down. That there's that there are alternatives that need to be employed ahead of time in terms of ventilation or in terms of that kind of thing to let.
It would alert them to implement the protocols that they have going.
They would
in the
have, that's
building,
correct.
And there's certain protocols about not turning on switches, electric, those sorts of things that they would probably be alert to.
And at the present time, there's no sensors in there that go ahead and automatically vent that area out?
I do not
if this
believe
occurs?
there are.
That brings up a question around the specifications for these plants in general. If that's a need, you would think that these guys build these plants all over the place, right? So are we sure that, I'm not questioning Jamie, I'm just saying somebody ought to report back to the company or whoever the designer, if this is something that is truly a life and death type thing or something that should be done. And obviously we've seen what happened in Farmington. We don't want to mess around with anything like that. But in the specifications, you would think.
Our facility, the Headworks building, was going down to the, getting closer to the river. I mean, that's its outfall. And given that location, it made that building way deeper than you might normally have in a sewer treatment situation. That said, I having listened to Rich, who I apologize for, can't be here this evening, but his daughter is being inducted into the National Honor Society, and I assured him that that's an event he didn't want to miss. But the need for alarms that provide quicker notification to them in the event of this case. And as I said, when Jamie arrives, he can give you all the technical details, but I asked the question about design and about whether we were in violation of safety regulations from this, and the answer, for OSHA purposes, an alarm system is an alarm system. What does it have to be? Does it have, an email system is an alarm. Is it what we want our people to be getting response with, or something that's
No,
more proactive?
I get that part of it. Obviously, the notification piece is a big part of it. The question that I think Jamie may be able to provide more answers to is if it's an important thing to have, why isn't it?
Why wasn't it there in the first
design,
place?
and as Jim said, how does it get vetted and all those sorts of.
I sit on the committee. I don't know all the details that Jamie knows, but what I gathered from the information I was given is what they could get for answers from the engineers that were involved and the people that drew up the plans is that it was an oversight. They just missed it. And I guess it was brought up to them during construction that was that going to be something that was going to happen, and they went through and did it, the plans as they were drawn. So, there's, other than it was an oversight, I haven't gotten a better explanation for why it's not there. I think what they're really after is something that would have an alarm would be tripped if the sensor sensed gas down in the hole. There would be some sort of maybe a light upstairs when you enter the building saying that there's something going on. Plus it would send out some notification to their phone or to the office or maybe even dispatch. And that would start protocols to, before somebody get down in there and something happened to them.
That all makes sense. Do we have any recourse to go back?
I don't think so.
I mean, we spent the
I
money.
think we approved the plans.
Yeah.
Nobody caught it. It was an oversight.
And
so they
even
provided what we approved them to build.
If OSHA, when they came, or we had our recent Safety Works inspection and they did all of our facilities, if they had cited us for failure to have that, we might have some recourse with the fact that we just paid for that thing to be designed and thing. What would happen is it would be retrofit and it would come out of contingency, which we just spent.
Mhm.
But this wasn't identified in that and hasn't been as a required element in that facility. But
Okay. We had, Bruce, did you have a question too? Or
Yeah.
can you come up?
Yeah. If I understand it right, you're going down inside of a tank, basically. That should have been on them plans. You can't enter a tank, you can't enter a swimming pool, you can't enter anything like that.
it's a
And the department, the workers department there, they should have cited it when they were there. If it's an issue.
and that after this was, I went back and went through. They had cited a number of things, and the things that they cited weren't huge, but they were some of them were elements that were part of that, and the engineering company went back and redid them all. So everything that was on the list was done, and they were They're extremely comprehensive. I don't know why that one wasn't when there were 3 or 4 other items that were noted that the engineers did go good for and make changes to.
I mean, we shouldn't have to cover them for not engineering it right.
No, the fact of the matter is that
That's,
whether they designed it into it or they didn't, the cost to do it would have come from the project, which the contingent, if it had been discovered during the process, the contingency would have had to cover the fact that it was an addition to the plans. So one way or another, it would get paid for by either the funding for the project or reserve from sewer. Those are our only alternatives.
I mean, basically, we would have paid for it anyway. But the engineering company that designs it, we ought to look at a different one next time we design a project. Because they evidently aren't foreseeing everything in the future like that. When it comes to public safety, I can't see how you can forget it, that's all.
I think that's a valid point. I'm glad that this was caught, and I would like the opportunity to give Jamie just a chance to explain this, especially because I don't just want to go on the minutes from the safety committee that basically just state that, you know, there was a system alarmed on a Saturday morning and it went nowhere because the alarm isn't installed and they had no prior warning. Given Jay's understanding of it, and I'm not holding it anything, Jay, I understand you were just trying to, but regardless, this is this is one of those things where, quite frankly, the engineering company didn't do its job, as far as I can tell. If everything that's been talked about here this evening is actually what transpired, and quite frankly, I've got to wonder about OSHA too. And I think both OSHA and the engineering company are quite lucky that there wasn't an incident, because not only would that have cost a lot of people money, but it could have cost people's lives. The bottom line is, from a pragmatic approach to this alarm system needs to be installed. I'm not opposed to doing it, but I would like to have a conversation with the engineering company and give them a chance to save face and install this free of charge.
And I think I agree. I think OSHA, we need to provide feedback to OSHA and find out if they're the governing body in these sorts of things. If they're missing
Yep.
a piece like this, then they're certainly not doing their job.
Because whoever signed off on that ought to at least be able to explain. And it might behoove them to stand right there and do it and explain why that happened the way it did.
So as a takeaway, Sue, would you contact engineering company, contact OSHA, and just try to get an explanation?
Safety Works is who did our inspection, which is through Maine Department of Labor, and I will contact them, and I will also ask Alder to come to our next meeting to discuss this.
Good, I'll look forward to that.
So what I had was a motion. We need to do it regardless of whether we can get anything out of the people that failed on this. So the motion is to approve this in the committee. Is that what I?
Yeah.
Move it to the council, yeah, absolutely.
Move
Yep.
it to the council. Okay, all in favor? Okay. Next is the ice rink proposal. Nick?
I have a copy of the proposal. Nick Tomasco, Bucksport YMCA. Getting pretty cold out there, and it's time to start thinking about the ice rink. The YMCA has been managing recreational assets in Bucksport, and one of the things we recently brought to our recreational advisory committee was how do we, with the weather we get in down East Maine, extend our skating season for citizens of Bucksport. One of the big problems we have is foul weather after a freeze. Maintaining a smooth, skatable surface throughout the winter is extremely difficult, especially when you look at the structure of our rink currently. We have an NHL official rink. It's a beautiful structure. It's 200 feet long, 85 feet wide, and that's very big. So what happens is when we have foul weather, we start getting pressure cracks there's shifting that goes on in the ice because of its size. There a lot of times will be shop ice where if we do get very cold weather, we can't fill it fast enough so that it freezes consistently, so you get large bumps from one section to another. So what we have here is the recommendation from our advisory committee to take that footprint and shrink it from that 200 feet and make that 100 feet by 85 feet wide. 85 feet wide is currently what it sits at. So you'd be going from roughly 16,000 square feet down to about 8,500 square feet. It sounds like a loss. I assure you that it is not, because that 16,000 square feet is impossible to maintain and keep at a consistent, smooth level of ice without constant maintenance. And we don't have a volunteer squad that's capable of doing that at the moment. So basically what it would be is laying down sheets of plywood within the structure that exists, bracing it with some rink-specific support brackets, just waterproof support brackets, and a liner which has generally about a 2 to 3 year life expectancy depending on how it's stored, how it's cared for in the off-season. We don't have the luxury of indoor storage for that, so I think the closest we could get would be tarping the outside of it. And you're looking at about $2,695 for total investment. Those numbers were put together by the Down East Family Y maintenance director, Bob Dyer, who is completing a recent project in Ellsworth that's very similar. And as you see in the diagram, the proposed new footprint would fit inside. You'd basically cut the corners off, the rounded corners, and you'd maintain an entrance right over the blacktop to the rink that would sit inside the existing structure. Couple things that this would do: ease of maintenance, quality of skating surface, and I believe that would equate to more skatable days in the season. So people could anticipate. I think part of the reason we don't have as many people using that facility is it's hard to anticipate when it's going to be open. People assume it's going to be closed. I'd be happy to answer some questions, but I do want to add that even though it's a beautiful structure, it's showing its age, and I would imagine that in about 4 to 8 years, you're going to be looking at some major renovation up there. The wood's rotted. 3 years ago, we painted the whole thing. We swapped out some rotten boards, and it was dressing up a failed project. You know, it's on its way out. So we got to start thinking about what we're going to do to either replace that or permanently shrink the structure.
You know how many, in the best year since you've been on board up there, how many skaters in the season you've had?
I could only tell you anecdotally, very few. We didn't notice any pickup hockey games, maybe albeit a couple. But yeah, there was only a few folks out on that ice at the same time. The exception to that would be when the Miles Lane School did their winter carnival and brought a bunch of kiddos down. You know, we have a ton of ice skates that were donated in there, and they were able to outfit all the kids with ice skates. It was a really cool event, and we'd like to see more of that. They were walking on frozen slush because of the surface.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, if we fix the ice, you believe that we'll have more usage?
I believe so.
Consistent usage.
Yeah. I believe people will be able to anticipate that the rink is going to be open, and we're going to be able to maintain it easier. You know, that large surface, again, it gets a lot of pressure cracks, which need to be packed with slush, and then you flood on top of that. And if the weather isn't you got like a 5-degree sway either side where there's the sweet spot, and then it's just not going to work for you.
Who floods that for?
I do that.
You do it yourself right up there?
Yep. Typically, it's pretty much. It's not much more water than that. We get assistance from the fire department a couple times a year. But typically, every 8 hours I put into that space, you might get like an hour of skating time out of that. It's ridiculous.
And you think this will help fix that?
I believe this is going to help
Yeah.
quite significantly. And then I think that the folks that we bring on after the school hours, we're going to be running hours from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when school lets out, having that staffed, to 7 o'clock. They'll do a lockup, but then the lights will be on a timer until 9. Those high school kids that we're going to hire will be able to go out there and drag a rake of water around and really smooth that surface.
The liners goes underneath it, correct?
Yep.
All right, and so with that liner, is that one of the better quality liners we can put in there? Because if it's going to last 4 to 8 years, is there a way to get a liner that will last at least to that time or close to it? Or do they have different levels of that? Or
This was a rink-specific liner,
Yeah.
and it's similar to what you would see in a landfill going over, whatever it is they have in there. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that this was rink-specific.
Right, I mean, you're saying 4 to 8 years if we do nothing. If we did nothing to that area, it lasts another 4 to 6 years, or 4 to 8. So if we do something to it, if we put this money in now, that could last longer.
Well, you're talking about the entire.
Yeah, I'm talking about
structure.
the entire structure. This would last as long as we could take care of it. The only thing we would need to swap out every few years would be that liner. But the physical structure of the rink right now, that 200-foot oval, that's in pretty bad shape. And it's going to be a tear down here pretty soon.
Yeah, despite being old enough to know better, I use that with some regularity, because in my head I'm still 20. I agree with you 100%. Whether you look at how it's lit, the ends are very rarely used because they're dark. It's dark on the north end, and the ends are the worst to maintain in terms of keeping them smooth. For all intents and purposes, you're just keeping a pond smooth, really, a very, very flat pond. And so I think if we're going to have an ice rink up there, I think it will not impact usage at all. I think Nick is right. You probably will be able to see more usage if you shrink it, and you can maintain it from that perspective. And plus, I won't feel so bad about myself when 3 trips around, my ankles are barking at me.
Say why.
They did the same thing in. It's hard to. Brewers had 2.
Yeah.
They now have one up by the indoor ice arena, but when they put that one in and they redid it, it's actually about the same size as this one. And over years, we've watched it. I mean, it gets quite a bit of use, but it's extremely hard to maintain. And with the winters that we have, the last couple, they use half of it.
Yep.
Ideally, I mean, you're not going to have with Bucksport doesn't have hockey teams.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when my kid was in school, he was the only one in his grade or in the school actually at the time that played hockey. So, I think by making it a little smaller, easier to maintain, I think you're going to have better ice quality, and you're going to have people that are, just going to want to go up and skate. Couples will go up and skate and do different things like that. I think it's a great idea.
in your email, you had written about a rink resurfacer. Is that something you're still looking to?
Oh, I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Zamboni?
It's similar, yeah. It's the poor man's Zamboni. It's basically a perforated pipe that you hook to a hose and you drag that. And yes, I would like to include that. Thanks for the reminder.
Yep.
That is it. I remember seeing that in
Yeah,
here.
it's
That's part of it, yeah.
$284 for the resurfacer.
$284. Yep.
Any other comments, questions, public?
I do. I had a couple of people at the Snowmobile Club last night that were begging me to ask you folks to put a roof over it, not a structure, just a roof, so that you wouldn't have the rain coming down on the ice and the slush and stuff that was ruining it so often. They thought then if you flooded it and got it smooth that it would maintain easier and I said I would mention it, so. mentioned to me.
Something to keep in mind for the future. You know, one of the things, and I don't know, it's a lot different than it used to be, but the National Guard Engineering Unit does community projects, and there's a horizontal and a vertical construction unit, and, you know, maybe it would probably be a couple of years, 3-4 years down the road getting on the list, but that might be something to try with them.
We used those extensively over the course of my career. We have utilized the National Guard. 2 weeks, you'd get them 2 weeks in the summer, and you'd use them for whatever projects that you.
Yeah, they did, the Dover football field is pretty much years ago,
Yep.
but just an option down the road for that.
Yeah, it's the changing weather. If this were Alberta, it would be 20 below from December to March, and the ice would be good until the snow came, but yeah.
And I do think a pavilion is probably the only way you would have super consistent
Yep.
skating. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And a lot of times you see that at fairgrounds. They use fairgrounds for it. And that rink does not have to be located where it is. If we were to say, okay, we're gonna move it, you know, if you didn't have a roof over it, you can have temporary structures just about anywhere. I know Ellsworth puts theirs in a park, and then they pack it up and put it in a shed. So yeah, definitely something to talk about at advisory.
Okay. Any comments?
Thank you.
All right. So
Motion to move it forward.
Motion to move it forward.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to move this forward to the council. All in favor? Vote. What do we got next? Radio system replacement.
The VHF repeater, which is located at the highway garage, but is the VHF repeater for the police frequency, is supposed to be operating at 100. I'm going to get the hertz wrong, but and it's currently operating at approximately 25. It's a 20-year-old piece of equipment.
Yep.
It is not functioning right now. Police and highway are on the same frequency, which is not sustainable over time, but is what they're doing. But the VHF repeater at that site for the police frequency needs to be replaced, and that's what the Brown's Communication is the vendor that's there. Brown's takes care of all of the town's radio equipment.
Motion to move forward.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Discussion? Comments, questions?
Is that a multi-frequency repeater or just a single?
The VHF repeater is the one that feeds the police frequency. Of course, I don't have one of them here either. But they had this weekend. It was Monday, I believe, when I got the call that they had been experiencing problems in radio operation for the police. So the VHF repeater, which feeds that particular frequency, is not functioning at a high enough level. And now, meaning that there's more for highway fire, that there are segments to each one.
What was the question, Bruce?
I just wondered if it was a multi-frequency.
It's it just says XPR 8000 VHF repeater 100 watt here. We can get that
100
question.
watt isn't a lot either.
We can get that question answered, I'm sure, pretty quickly.
The chief will be
Just
here
whether-
later.
Whether by repeating through it, you can broadcast further. I just wondered if they could talk to the state police through it, or whether it's only the town.
No,
and the
they can
state
talk to
police.
whoever they want to talk to on that channel, but it's got to boost it enough to get it
Right.
outside of the.
You can't broadcast on any other channel.
Their repeater is gonna be just for their tower.
Yep.
So that it allows their tower to reach out and touch somebody. It's not gonna matter
Who
what-
they talk to.
Yeah, I say, what station they're on.
Channel.
So if they're on Brewers or Bangor's, they're on Bucksport's primary,
Right.
that means it's gonna,
It's gonna
that's
boost
what it's
their
boosting. Okay, so it's boosting to them. If they're on Hancock County, then it would boost it out to Hancock counties. At least to one of their towers and one of their repeaters would go through. Yeah, so I mean, it's a,
As long as it can hit that other frequency, that's all, I'm just wondering.
right now it's not. So it's a safety issue. It's a, you know, I mean, that's, their radios, their communication to the outside world from whatever call they're on, wherever they are, or whoever's house or traffic stop, that their communication isn't getting out. It's not getting out because the equipment that we have right now is 20 years old and it's broke.
It's working more like a CB rather than.
Probably, most likely, yeah.
Two-way radio.
Correct.
Most of your two-way radios, you can talk to any frequency you want.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask a radio guy, but basically it's working a quarter of what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
I'm listening, sir.
Didn't we just make an upgrade on the thing so that anything that was going in, we could still get the same things coming out before they could hear us, but.
I'm pretty sure that had to do with the dispatch itself, not
That
the
was
tower.
dispatch.
Not the tower. Two different spots.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, we need a motion to that.
Need a
Go
motion?
forward.
Motion to move that together.
Got a motion, second?
Second.
Got a motion, second to move that forward, the radio system replacement, and that we got the price, and that was $6,000 something, million?
Yep.
Which reserve does that come out of?
Dispatch.
What was the final price on that? 69,
66, yep, and 30.
66.30.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? So, and number 6, programmable thermostat.
Luke was here a minute ago, and now he isn't.
You knew it was going to be his turn.
Well, I don't know what he knew. Our code officer has been doing some building evaluation here, and came to me this past week with some ideas for cost savings in a couple of areas, and the first one is the programmable thermostat.
I was simply thinking that we've got 13 zones here in the office, and people adjust it to wherever they're comfortable, which I have no problem with. But very seldom do any of us remember to turn them back when we leave. So I thought if we put some programmable ones in, especially where we're working 4 days a week now, they could always be overridden during that cycle. You know, if they were cold, they can still turn it up. They're not hampered from that. But come the next cycle, whether, you know, if it's 6 p.m. that night or whatever, it would go back into the programmed mode and turn it back down and hopefully save us some money, was what I was thinking. And whether that quote is a good quote or not, it's just one quote. I actually had called Trevor and was talking to him about the plumbing issue that should also be on there, and mentioned the thermostats, and so he put a quote together for both. But
This isn't a final quote, then, this is just
no,
sort of
it's just a
ballpark.
ballpark.
This is just
so
a
you
ballpark.
know where we were coming from. Do you want to talk about the plumbing one too, or? Yeah. Okay.
That's
So
it.
the plumbing goes back to my lead green building days, and basically there's. But I took their spreadsheet and I manipulated it a little bit because there's stuff in there that we didn't need. But the toilet in the men's room right now is 3 gallons per flush. The toilet in the women's room is 2.5 gallons per flush. The urinal is 1 gallon per flush. The faucets are 1.5 gallons a minute. Pretty much the standard now for new commercial toilets is 1.28 gallon per flush, and they're air assisted. They work. They're not going to be these toilets that you have to flush it 3 times to get it to go down, and you know, end up using just as much water. That's not the case with these new toilets. So the toilets and the urinal, I mean, think about it, a gallon per flush, that's a gallon of milk, you know, that's a lot of water to flush out a urinal, so, and then, the sinks would go down to half a gallon a minute, but the way that chart's written, it takes into account the number of employees we have, the number of average guests that we have,
So the savings annually 16,784 gallons?
correct.
And what's that translate to?
We're currently using about 28,000 gallons, so it would be over half.
What does it cost? So
We would cut over half of the water usage right now in the town office. So, to me, should equate to some money savings. I would think the payback would be pretty quick on that one. And honestly, I haven't done the math, I don't know what's there, but it's probably something we should look at on the public bathrooms for the waterfront walkway, and maybe at the public safety building, maybe in the town garage, I don't know. But, I mean, if we're paying for water at all these different locations, and it's something that's fairly easy with a quick payback, then it probably makes sense to look at, but this one was easy for me to do since I'm right here every day, so.
So what is
I know that
I'm
chart.
not a great chart guy.
Yeah, no, I know
So
it's a little confusing.
What's the cost?
The cost,
Is the cost on here?
no, the cost
Oh.
is on the next page.
The-
There's a quote from Trevor
Proposals on the
Robertson,
next page.
from Robertson's Plumbing and Heating.
For $1,500 for
Yeah.
all this?
That's for the labor, the new toilets, the new urinal,
Oh, no, that's the
and
thermostat.
the,
Oh, I thought that was just the thermostats.
yeah, that looks like
That's just the thermostats.
yeah, there should be another page there.
There's
or-
another page.
It's not in the email.
If it's not there, I can go in my office and get it, because I have it.
Yeah, we didn't have the other.
These
It's similar
urinals
money,
aren't
it's like-
waterless, right?
Oh, heck no. No.
Okay, good.
No, the waterless urinals smell and they
Yeah.
don't. They
We
don't
have the
work.
other one.
Yeah, we did away with.
It's a .125 gallon per flush, and those seem to work pretty well. I put those in a lot of projects. They've worked well.
Oh, that's perfect. I was just, as long as it
Yep.
wasn't waterless, I'm good.
No, absolutely not. No.
I mean, it would be good to see, it's the right thing to do, in my mind, on both
Well,
of
with
them, but.
over half the water usage, I mean, you would think that's half your bill. It would save you, I mean, right?
You would
We're
think, but
saving
I don't
16
know
I
how
don't
it
know how
works.
that all equates.
I don't know if it's like electricity bill, where part of it's the infrastructure and part of it's how much you use, so.
There's a per gallon, actually it's per 100 gallons, but a charge for,
So it could be significant savings.
And it's gonna
there.
reduce your sewer bill too.
It's gonna reduce sewer bills.
that's right.
Yeah.
Because if you reduce water, you reduce sewer, and that is $9.29
There you go.
100 cubic feet.
Right.
So, and
I mean,
the quote was around 12 to 1,400, something like that. So, I mean, the payback would be within a year, I think.
1,400.
Yes.
Well,
That's counting labor and everything, so.
And that's just one quote. We
Not-
would,
Not
if-
12
and
to 14.
Yeah,
what I
one-
told
No, no,
Luke is that I wanted to talk to the committee about this, about the idea of doing this, and if the committee supports it, we'll get the sufficient number of quotes and bring it to the council for,
Well, I mean, ideally you did one building. You did one city building.
Yeah,
town
and the others might have water efficient stuff in them, I don't know. I'm just saying they might. I went in here and I'm like, man,
How old's
this,
the public safety building?
1960s.
Okay. How old's your building, Jay?
1960s.
None of them have it.
okay,
I mean, that's just a.
Yeah.
It would be nice. I mean, I can see the savings, or I can.
sure,
I mean, you're saving over half of 16,000 gallons.
Yep.
That's a big savings.
yeah,
I would love to see a quote for all.
I
All three
think
buildings.
Public Works isn't on town.
You got your own well and septic?
so that, there's no savings there then, other than
But
just being
we're saving
environmentally
water.
friendly.
Yeah.
It's important to recognize
But
there's
public
two things.
safety would be a considerable, something that would likely
That'd be huge.
result
Yep.
in a very large,
Yep.
I would love to see both buildings combined in this quote.
And I'd like, I don't know
Oh,
what the
I was gonna say the
waterfront-
waterfront.
And it's too bad too, because I think Rich just replaced some of those fixtures. I don't know what they put in, because it happened just before I started and I wasn't included
I
with
don't
that.
think you replaced the toilets.
I don't think he did.
You just put the air dryer.
Air dryers and hand
Okay,
Yeah,
things.
so,
We'll look into that.
that'd be
Well,
good.
he'll be
And
here
I-
tomorrow. We can.
they're old.
So, a question, any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Questions from the public? Okay, council, any questions?
Can we also try to look the quotes to local businesses in
Okay.
Bucksport, please?
So, we need a motion, and what a part of the motion would be, we're gonna get additional quotes and.
This isn't on the agenda tonight, right?
No.
So maybe we could ask that we get quotes from the public safety building
Yep.
and, the
Waterfront,
waterfront.
bathrooms.
Just bring it
Any-
back to the committee.
Any, I would say any municipal bathroom in the town.
That's on public water
It's on
and
public
sewer.
water and public sewer. You know, and then that gives you
The
a.
public sewer, I'm more excited about the public sewer piece of this than the public water because the cost is,
I mean, I think if we do all municipal,
yeah.
buildings that have to do with public sewer and water, and then bring it back to this committee.
It was just over 1,400 was his quote. But the other thing that, was in that quote that isn't applied to that was,
Excuse me?
the other thing that was in there was, ADA insulation kits on the drain pipes under the sinks. We don't have those right now, and, so we're not ADA compliant, and somebody could, if they're in a chair, they could bang their knee on the pipes, or in theory burn themselves, but I don't think that would happen, but that's why they have those insulation kits on there, and we don't have those. They aren't very much, but that was included in the quote so that we could get those compliant.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll just get more information, quotes, local vendors, and bring it back to the committee before we vote to take it forward. All right. What else? Is that it?
Nope.
Miles Lane.
Miles Lane that's on here is the unconstructed section of Miles Lane that is a paper street all the way down to Main Street between Dunkin' Donuts and the lot adjacent to it, on the far side heading out of town. And this was discovered because there's interest from Dunkin' Donuts, I guess, in acquiring the property next door in order to redevelop their site, rebuild that. Except that there's a paper street running between those two entities that goes up as far as Wenbell and hits Wenbell. It doesn't go
Yeah,
anywhere, but
We all spend time in that neighborhood. You know where it is, right? It's overgrown now until you get,
Over that?
yep,
Yeah.
until you get through that overgrown part, and then you can walk the whole length of that road down to Dunkin' Donuts, yeah. But it's hasn't been used since.
so the request is whether or not the town would consider eliminating that paper street, so that the property, the Dunkin' Donuts and the adjacent could be made into one larger lot.
Is the intent, if they got that lot, to reconstruct that whole area? That's a danger.
Well, it's to make it so that it's not all jammed into that, yeah.
So
There-
what do we need to do here?
Well, we'd have to, Luke, did we determine yet where the ownership lies with all of these? Is this a town-owned paper street?
I don't know that we own any property. I think we just have this permanent we could put a street there if we wanted, but that's it. I don't think we have any interest in the land other than that purpose.
And so if we eliminate our interest in that property, it would go back on each side of that to the abutters would
And
have
it's
it.
never gonna be turned into a road.
It would be hard pressed to get through Wenbell, but that's, you know, there's,
It'd be a terrible transition once you get to the,
yeah. So if this is something that the committee is, I would like to take this to the council for consideration. It's another one of those items that, it's there, but it's not ever going to be more than that. And right now, it's inhibiting the ability of that business to.
Motion to send it to council.
second.
Motion second, send it to council, all in favor?
Motion
The vote, motion to adjourn,
Second.
we are adjourned at